What's going on, everybody? Christopher O'Toole here with you today, and I'm talking about 10 tips for every photographer in the world, okay? Things to do, things not to do, and when you hear about things not to do, you really need to listen up, because just like anything in life, you start a bad habit in photography, it's hard to break that bad habit. Whether it's holding your camera wrong, whether it's doing whatever in photography, starting off, you're probably gonna have some bad habits, and so you need to break those bad habits as soon as you can, and so you won't bring those bad habits farther along, and it'll then, once of course you bring them farther along, it'll be a lot harder to break them. So here is 10 tips for every photographer. So tip number 1. Don't delete your photos on camera, okay? Now, this is a mistake I made early on in photography. For the first while, I would delete my photos on my camera. Newsflash, your little monitor on your camera is a lot smaller than your desktop, your laptop, whatever computer you have, and you won't be able to see the quality or the potential of your photos on your camera. So don't delete your photos on your camera, because something on your camera, on your monitor, you may think, oh, that photo is way blown out, that photo's way underexposed, whatever it may be. You bring it in, at least if you're shooting in RAW, you'll be able to adjust that photo a lot more, and therefore you'll be able to use that photo when you thought you may not have been able to. So just as a general rule, don't delete your photos on camera. I sometimes do still. If I accidentally focus on the wrong thing, I sometimes have touch shutter enabled, and it'll touch my stomach, whatever it may be, and then it'll accidentally take a picture. Okay, whatever, go and delete those photos. But normally that delete button you shouldn't even pay attention to it, okay? And so we're on to number 2. Tip number 2 is make sure what file size you're shooting in, okay? Whether it's RAW, it's JPEG, what size of JPEG, what quality, whatever it may be, just make sure, just take 5 seconds before your photo shoot, make sure what type of photo you're shooting in, because I can't tell you how many times I've gone and I've taken pictures and I've been really excited. I bring all the files onto the computer and I open them up only to figure out that they're JPEG. I'd switched the camera mode to JPEG for some reason, and so I had them on JPEG instead of RAW. And on certain times I was using fast shutter. I accidentally shot that in JPEG and I was using fast shutter, so it was a little bit underexposed. RAW would have been able to take care of that, but with JPEG I pretty much couldn't adjust that photo, and so that photo was ruined. So quick, just take a few seconds before every photo shoot, check and see what file size you're shooting in, and you'll save yourself some edits later on. And speaking of checking, this is on to tip number 3, which is check your camera bag before you go out on a photo shoot. So just quick 1-minute check before you go out on a photo shoot. Just open your bag. Okay, I got my camera, got all my lenses, got my batteries. They're charged up, by the way. Got all my SD cards, got my tripod, and got whatever else I need. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to take a picture and I've turned on my camera only to see the monitor say no card in camera, and so then I have to default to my slower SD cards, which don't let me take as many pictures in a row as possible before it processes them, and so I have to take pictures a lot slower in that case. So just run through everything, make a list on a piece of paper, stick it in your camera bag, and just quickly go through everything that you usually have for a photo shoot, and make sure everything's there before you go out on a photo shoot, and so you won't be missing those things later on when you need them. And tip number 4 is don't put your camera in your bag with anything attached to it, okay? Like, say, your microphone or your remote, whatever it may be that's attached to it. Unplug it before you stick it in the camera, because best case scenario, you stick it in your camera and the attachment breaks off, and best case scenario, you have to spend $20-$30 for a new attachment, or maybe even more than that for whatever it is. But that's actually better than having the camera attachment actually hurt the actual camera housing, and so then you have to send it back to the camera company and have them fix it, and that'll obviously be a lot more than just paying for a simple camera attachment. So just save yourself all that time and all that money, and just unplug everything before you put it in your camera bag. It takes 5 seconds to take out and put all the implements back in that you'll be needing for your photo shoot if you're going on several photo shoots where you're doing the same thing. So just don't put your camera in your camera bag with anything attached to it. And tip number 5 is use that histogram. So basically, you may be wondering what a histogram is. Well, basically a histogram is that levels thing that's in the upper corner of your camera monitor, and learning to use the histogram can be very powerful. So basically a simple explanation of it is, if all your levels are on the left side of the histogram, then your image is too underexposed. If all the levels are on the right side of the histogram, your image is too overexposed. So you want your levels to be right in nice, almost mountain peak in the middle of your camera. And so then that way you'll save as much information in your image as possible. So basically watching your histogram is almost a scientific reading of your image, and I can't suggest using it enough. So I'm not sure how you turn it on most camera brands, but on Canon, all you have to do is hit that info button a few times and that'll adjust your screen. You hit it a few times and the histogram will turn on. And so that's how you do that. Tip number 6. We're halfway there. Hang in there with me. So tip number 6 is take lots of photos from different angles, okay? Go out of your comfort zone to take different photos. Now, when you go to a photo shoot, you have a certain photo in mind of, say, whatever it is. Say it's nature, or it's portrait photography, or it's you're shooting business photography for a business. Whatever it is, don't go into your photo shoot with a certain frame of mind that you want this photo and you want this photo. Now that's good, take those photos, but take more than just those photos. Take photos from different angles, take a lot more photos, because if you don't need them, then you're not any worse off. Just go and delete those photos. And you may come across a certain photo that you've taken of that photo shoot where you wouldn't have done it before if you hadn't taken a lot more photos, if you had just taken those photos that were in your head at a certain time. And so there's really nothing to lose with taking more photos. And also, when doing that, it is often good. I like sometimes, not always, but sometimes I like looking through the monitor on my camera because I want to catch that lens flare coming right across that building or whatever it may be. Looking through the monitor sometimes can definitely improve your photos because the way your eyes see something and the way the camera sees something, of course, is different. And so looking through your camera's eye can sometimes be helpful when taking photos. And so tip number 7 is, if possible, edit your photos after taking them, okay? So I've made the mistake of not doing this. We went out for a trip out west for like 3 solid weeks. I didn't have a laptop with me that could have actually edited my photos. And so when I came back home, I had all these tens and tens of gigabytes of storage that I needed to go through and just edit. And so still, a year and a half later, I still haven't edited them all because I'm constantly shooting new photos, of course, and I'm editing those. So all those files are just sitting on my hard drive growing dust because I didn't edit them. Now, of course, I couldn't edit all those photos when I got the chance to, but as a general rule, edit those photos if possible right after taking them so you can still be in the frame of mind that you were when you were shooting them. If you had a certain edit in mind or whatever you had in mind, I would definitely suggest you editing those photos as soon as possible after your photo shoot. So we're on to tip number 8, which is use your monitor to adjust your sensor. Now, this may be an obvious, this is probably a given, but before you switch angles or whatever, you may be pointing more towards the sun. You may not even realize it. Just quick turn on your monitor, adjust the sensor, adjust your exposure to fit whatever you're being exposed to at the certain time. Because, of course, like I said, you may be pointing more towards the sun or you may be pointing away from the sun. And so if you're just quick taking those pictures one right after another in completely different exposures, either one shot is going to be completely blown out or one shot is going to be completely too dark. And while if you're shooting in RAW you can edit that, it's still best to shoot your photos with as much proper exposure as possible, and so keeping as much information in the photo as possible. So adjusting your sensor to one different scene in a whole photo shoot, it's not going to kill you, but you may end up paying for it in the long run. So I wouldn't suggest doing that. I would suggest just every time you set to a new scene, adjust your sensor to it as much as possible, and so to keep as much information in the photo as possible. Tip number 9, we're almost there. Tip number 9 is delete your old already used RAW photos. Now, I know this is probably pretty obvious, but this is something I didn't do for the first while in my photography because you may be just a little bit OCD and you think, oh, yeah, I've already edited that photo, but I may need the RAW photo a year from now because I may want to edit the photo a completely different way from then. No. Edit your photos and then delete the RAW photos because I know my camera at 24 megapixels is a little bit over 30 megabytes per picture. Now, that will start to add up if I didn't delete all the photos I originally had after taking them. That's just going to really stack up room on my hard drive. And just go ahead, hit that delete button. Close your eyes if you want to while you do it, but just delete that photo after you've done it because, yeah, it's just smarter that way. So, tip number 10 is don't take pictures of every cool thing that you see, okay? Now, for photographers who've been doing it a while, you've probably already learned this. If you haven't, then where have you been? But when you're first getting into photography, I know it can be kind of tempting to, oh, that's cool, I want to take a picture of a guy, take that picture. No, don't do that, because first off, what has to go through your mind is, will this make a good picture? Will I be able to sell this? Will I be able to showcase it on my site? Whatever it may be. What has to go through your mind is, will this make a good picture? Not, is this something cool? Because yeah, there are a whole lot of cool things out there that just wouldn't make a good picture. In post, you may make your picture look a lot better than it did, but a lot of just cool things that you see are not going to be production worthy. So just try to keep your camera card clear of all those, oh, that's cool, I got to take a picture of that thing, because unless you have an idea in mind of how you could shoot it and make it production worthy, that's just going to take up space on your camera and your computer, and that's just not a good habit to get into. So that's it for me today. But before you go, I'll leave you with a bonus tip, something I like to call a note of sanity. So tip number 11 kind of is, name your files, name the photos on your computer, post editing. Doesn't matter if you name them, say if it's a bunch of pictures of the Grand Canyon, just name them Grand Canyon 1, Grand Canyon 2, Grand Canyon 3, and so on. Just don't leave them as their IMG underscore whatever. Name them something that makes sense, because if you're not posting things to sell or go to wherever they're meant to go and then deleting them off your computer, if you're keeping those photos on your computer, eventually you'll start having a lot of file names, and you may, hopefully you won't, but you may lose that folder, and so you need to search whatever and find that picture. I made this mistake when, of course, I went out west and I had all those photos, and so I just started naming them really stupid, dumb, random names that I honestly had no idea what they meant. And if I exported that photo accidentally to the wrong folder, then I won't be able to find it if it's a completely random, dumb name. And so that's something that I would definitely suggest doing with your photos. So yeah, that's it. If you like this video, smash that like button. If you have any questions or comments, just drop them in the comment section down below. And for videos like this, for videos on photography, on cinematography, I'd ask you to please consider subscribing, because this, of course, is my first video here on YouTube. And so I'm going to be posting photography videos, cinematography videos, and I'm going to vlog on here a bit. So I'd ask you to please consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video.